In this video, we're going to talk about arm path and arm action, and then some of the things to look for in the throwing motion. Max Wardell here, overheadathletics.com. I'm going to be the one talking to you guys about arm path and arm action today. So let's get into the video. And also, guys, I wanted to make a little announcement. Not very good news. If you've been following our social media, you may have seen a post on this. And if you've been following us for long enough, you know that Ed's had cancer in the past, and he's been diagnosed again. They found a lymphoma tumor in his sinuses in the beginning of May, and so he's been kind of going through treatment, trying to find out what's the best plan of care for him. But keep your thoughts and prayers with him. But I wanted to let everyone know, in case you're wondering, well, why hasn't Ed been in any of the videos? And yes, he's still involved, but he's going through a lot of different treatment and everything right now. So myself and others have began to do a lot of the videos like you're seeing now, and we look forward to getting Ed back as soon as he can, and hoping he gets well quick. But I just want to let you guys know, in case you weren't aware of that. You know, I know some of you guys don't follow us on social media. You don't even have social media. You're just on YouTube or going through the website, or whatever the case may be, somebody that came in for throwing. So just keep that in mind, and hopefully we'll get him back here soon. We'll keep you guys updated on that. I know we've had some questions, where's Ed been and stuff like that, but you know, we put up a short post the other day that Ed wrote, and so we put that up on Facebook and Instagram and Twitter and stuff. So if you're looking to check out any of those, at Overhead Athlete Institute on Facebook, Overhead Athletics, at Overhead Athletics on Instagram, and then at OAI Training on Twitter. But anyways, let's get into the video. Wanted to give you guys those announcements, and now let's talk about some of this stuff. So consider this is a very complex issue, and there's multiple things we're looking at when we're working with an athlete through our online video analysis, or through an athlete that came to us. We're considering so many different variables, which is, how does their hip move when this happens? Are they in lumbar side bending this way, or are they in right rotation when this happens? So it's the sequencing that's important, but there's some things that you can look at even with an untrained eye that you could say he's doing this or he's not doing this. But the most important thing is when these things are happening and how they're happening. So obviously this is going to be a video that may be new information to a lot of you guys, but it's going to be something that isn't super complex. And if you're interested in this topic, definitely give us a comment on the video. Say, hey, I like the video, post more on this topic, whatever it is. And you know, we'll be sure to do that. Give us a like. If you give us a like on the video, that tells us, hey, this is a good video, and we'll start putting more out about it. So that's something to keep in mind is, you know, we take athletes that come to the OAI through a baseball specific movement assessment, and then based on what we see there, we can even better analyze their throwing and decide, hey, are they in the right position here? Are they not in the right position here? Or maybe they can't access this position because of some functional limitation, flexibility, strength deficit, whatever it is. And then from there we say, okay, these are things we have to work on to improve that so that you can integrate it into their throw. So, you know, we keep all that in mind. At the same time, we're looking at, well, do they evert versus invert at their foot, or do they go into right rotation versus left rotation, side bending? So there's all different things that we are looking at when we're working with an athlete. But you know, overall, there's some things that, you know, you could look at, like I said, even with an untrained eye. You know, the first thing we're always going to note as one of our top things to look at in a thrower is whether they're bringing the ball towards their center of rotation. Are they bringing the ball inside 90 degrees? And what I mean is inside 90 degrees of elbow flexion. So if they're not bringing the ball in towards their center of rotation and they're leaving it out here and dragging it this way or whatever the case may be, you know, there's some potentially serious implications based on injury that could happen with that athlete. You know, the farther we get out there, the more unstable we get with our elbow and shoulder. I mean, we want to decrease our moment of inertia. So it's all physics, guys. And if we increase our moment of inertia, basically what we're doing is increasing the amount of resistance we have to fight in the throw to throw the same speed. So you've all heard the equation force equals mass times acceleration. Well, when we're talking about rotational activities or angular acceleration, angular force, the equation for angular force is F equals the moment of inertia times the angular acceleration. So it's a similar equation, and basically instead of mass, moment of inertia replaces it. So that's something to keep in mind. We want to reduce the moment of inertia, and you know, it gets into complex physics problems and stuff, but the concept applies, which is bring the ball closer to your center of rotation. You'll be able to rotate faster, which is why if you watch ever Olympics or on TV, whatever it may be, watch a figure skater. And if they want to spin fast, and like I always use this analogy, so some of the guys that I've trained will see this video and they'll be like, yeah, I've heard that 3 times. But they don't go like this when they want to spin as fast as they can in a circle. They bring their arms towards their center of rotation. And the reason is because a long lever arm like this, you cannot spin as fast. So that's something to keep in mind. And it's the same concept in gymnastics. They want to go faster around the bar, they bring their center of mass closer to the bar. So these are things we're keeping in mind, principles from physics that we're keeping in mind when we're going through throwing, but you want to bring that ball closer to the center of rotation. And from a medical aspect, there's a bunch of other reasons. So the farther they get out there, the closer they're getting to this open pack position with supination and elbow extension, which is where the joint has the most laxity. So at that point, the UCL has to resist gapping, shear, and distraction, where we want to reduce the amount of stress to the UCL, obviously. So putting the elbow in a position that's more stable is obviously optimal. And then at the same time, the farther I get from the center of rotation, especially if I'm resisting a large amount of inertia, the farther back I'm getting behind the scapular plane, which is going to be point number 3 in this video to look at. But I'm getting closer to that apprehension position for the shoulder, which is something I also want to avoid. So if you watch this video, you know, you can see the video of the thrower right here, and you can see how he brings that ball towards the center of rotation with the wrist inside the elbow, meaning he has more than 90 degrees of elbow flexion. And this is something you can look at with throwers, and the most important thing is when it happens. It's not necessarily always, you know, the pure amount of something that we get, but it's the sequencing of how it happens. So you can see that this athlete brings the ball towards their center of rotation, and then the ball begins to go away from them as they move down the mound due to tangential acceleration, which is something we talked briefly about in a post. But essentially, the ball has to come within 90 degrees at some point. So that's something you'll see in all high velocity throwers. Go on, you know, you're on YouTube right now, go and look up Aroldis Chapman, go and look up Nolan Ryan. And you'll see even in Nolan Ryan, the later he got in his career, the more efficient he got. But these are things you'll see in all the high velocity throwers, which is something we've written about in blogs and stuff. There's peculiar similarities between high velocity throwers. They all do some of these things very, very similar. And that's due to biomechanical efficiency, because all we are is biomechanical machines, as Ed always says, and I'm sure you've read in some of our posts. But wanted to touch on that. And then the next thing is the amount of elevation at the shoulder. You know, medical journals, a lot of them are moving towards, or studies are moving towards talking about elevation at the shoulder rather than abduction and flexion. They're kind of combining the two terms into elevation. So, you know, going off of that, you want between 90 and 110 degrees of shoulder elevation. If your elbow is below your shoulder, based on the way the humeral head sits in the socket, we're going to be running into the end of the socket when we go into maximal external rotation. But we don't want to be too high. You know, I've seen guys that are way up here. So a good estimate I've seen anywhere is like 95 to 105, or the concept here would be like 90 degrees, at least 90 degrees, so your elbow is at least shoulder height or a little above that, and that's perfect. Now, if you look at a thrower and it's like, it may appear that his elbow is above his shoulder when in fact it's actually not. And this could be due to lateral side bending to the left if he's a right-handed pitcher. So a lateral side bend to the left, and if I'm right here and you can see my elbow's below my shoulder, but now I bend this way, excessive side bending to the left, it now can appear like my elbow is above the shoulder when in fact at the joint it's no different than right here. So things to keep in mind, like I said, you know, we can't do a comprehensive video on this because there's so many things to look at and so many different things we're evaluating. But you can see with this thrower on the screen right now that he's going up and over and pulling down, but he's going over 90 degrees of elevation. And this would be considered pretty good. I mean, you know, we don't have any professional athletes in this video, and we'd like to show the video with some of the athletes that we've worked with. So keep in mind that none of these models are biomechanically perfect, if that was even possible, but all are on a pathway towards biomechanical efficiency or becoming a biomechanical model. And this is a fairly decent representation of what I'm talking about. And you can see how the elbow is higher than the shoulder right here. So wanted to note that. And then point number 3 would be elbow in front of the scapular plane. So you want to have, and what I mean by that is if you come, and for people that don't understand the scapular plane, it's basically about 30 degrees. If I did a straight line out to the sides of me, it's about 30 degrees in front of that. So I'm like here, so I got about 30 degree angle. If I had an angle right here, roughly 30 degrees. When I reach maximal external rotation, I want to have the elbow in front of the chest. And you know, this may be a slight exaggeration here in the video, but you want to get your elbow in front of the scapular plane or out in front when you reach maximal external rotation, because back here you're behind the plane of the scapula. Now, if you look at professional throwers, and I've seen people doing a video analysis online, and they often say, oh, look, their elbow's not in front of their face. That's a strange one I've heard. It's like, you don't want your elbow shoot down in front of your face. Well, actually what's happening is these professionals and some of these high-level throwers have a great amount scapular retraction, depression, thoracic extension. This isn't something I see in the majority of athletes. In fact, it's more rare as I see more and more of this posture. So, you know, and that's something, if you do have this posture, check out our video we did on thoracic extension, where we did a little bit of mobilizations with manual techniques and assessment, but we also did some exercises you could do as an athlete. But, you know, as you get more and more of this kyphotic posture, you're farther away from the posture that they have that allows them to do that, because their scapula is so far retracted and they're in thoracic extension. It gives the appearance that they're behind the plane of their scapula when in fact they aren't. So it's something to keep in mind if you're looking at pros. But you know, you can see in this video of this athlete that they do get in front of the scapular plane which, keep in mind, like I said, there's scapular retraction and depression, which alters that plane, but they're in front of the scapular plane when they reach this maximal external rotation moment, or when the forearm lays all the way back. So this is something you'll see, and if you look at some of the high velocity throwers, you'll see this as well if you know what you're looking at, because like I said, their abilities are in some way a result of their ability to have phenomenal mobility and flexibility, as well as postural control through those positions. So this isn't something we're going to see in our average high school athlete, which is what I've kind of been alluding to this whole video, which is there's so many other variables. If I can give you a few basic checkpoints that you can look at, and hopefully be able to keep in mind some of these things, then it's better than nothing. So, and like I said, we can post more on this topic if you guys like it. So hit the thumbs up right now. That tells us you liked it. And I want to talk about a little bit about, for one more point, one other thing that we see all the time, which is an arm path, which is the lack of pronation in the throw, the supination in the throw, putting them closer to that open packed position of the elbow joint there, or closer to the valgus deformation position, which is where you can actually injure your UCL, or the majority of UCL injuries or medial epicondylitis, any medial elbow injury is happening closer to that valgus deformation position. So, which is elbow extension and supination. So supination is this, by the way, in case you don't know. If you're holding a cup of soup, that's always the common analogy I hear. Cup of soup, that's supination. Pronation's the opposite. In the throw, it looks like this: pronation, supination. And I'm going to show you a video right here of somebody that's coming through the acceleration phase of the throw through the valgus deformation position. This is supination. You can see that's where they're supinating at the forearm, the wrist. You can see the ball turning. Now, I've heard a lot of people trying to advocate supination in the throw, and I'm yet to see any valid justification behind this. Pronation allows us to do a few things, and we talked about pronation because we did a video on how to improve your actual range of motion into pronation, active and passive. But pronation does a few things. It places the radius behind the ulna, so you resist shear more effectively, or the stress that goes like this, which can have the propensity to tear your UCL. But places the radius behind the ulna, so it creates a physiological buttress, which we've talked about in some of our posts in the past. So you can look at those on social media or whatever. And I know I'm referencing our social media a bunch, but we do have a bunch of posts on there. And, with the quantity that we've done in our however many posts over the course that we've had social media, there's some information that it would take us hours to cover it all in a video. So, check that out if you're really interested. But pronation would be, I'm coming through here, and this, if I was supinated at this point, it would look like this. Even my curveball, I am supinated, or a slider, but I'm not that supinated. It's relative pronation, and there's a supination moment that does happen in the throw, but I'm still maintaining relative pronation. So I'm not forcing it, but I'm putting myself in that position of pronation as I move down the mound, and I'm maintaining it rather than moving out from my center of rotation into supination, into a position where I'm going to get injured and I'm not going to throw as hard as I potentially can. So you can see with this athlete right here how he lifts the ball with pronation, and then he goes and maintains that relative pronation throughout the entire acceleration phase through a release. So there is some supination that happens. It's a supination moment. You're not in supination, so I don't know if that's where some of these misconceptions come from, but you're in relative pronation the whole time, and there's reasons for that beyond just the medical reasons. I'll release the ball closer to the plate if I'm pronated because it takes longer time for me to get out there. So if I'm supinated, I'll release the ball farther back here versus if I'm pronated, I'm out here. So there's things of that nature, but you can see with this athlete how he lifts the ball and into internal rotation, then to his internal rotation apex, then his external rotation apex, and then through the rest of the throw. So, you know, that's something that we always know is lifting an internal rotation versus external rotation and then bringing that ball towards the center of rotation as he comes through with pronation, up and over, and then finishes the throw out in front of his chest with his chest forward. So tons of stuff we could do on mechanics. Yeah, I'm not sure what would be the topic that most of you guys are looking for. I'm just going off of what people have asked us. So if you have a question about the throwing motion or some peculiarity that's in your throwing motion and you want to ask about it, you know, contact us individually or post a comment. If you post a comment, it may be something we're more likely to cover in a video like this. We may contact you back individually. You know, it depends on what the question is and how applicable we think it may be to the majority of people. But like I said, keep in mind that there's different things happening at different joints, and you can't just look at the arm, and you shouldn't just look at the arm. You should look at how each thing moves in sequence with each other thing down the mound, and that's what it is. Improving the sequencing of your throw will allow you to throw harder and will allow you to reduce the likelihood that you will become injured or that you will get injured. So wanted to talk about that in this video. Edited in some of these throwers and hopefully gave you guys a good representation of some of the things we're talking about. I mean, it's a difficult subject because biomechanics isn't something that you can teach an athlete in a day, and it's not something I can teach any other person in a day. It's something that you learn as you learn anatomy and as you learn physics and all these different things that come into play with it. So, you know, touched on all that stuff. If you have any questions, let me know. And then, like I said, I know this has been a video that everybody's looking forward to. I don't know how many questions on Twitter, and we haven't even been using Twitter very long, but we thought that this was something we definitely had to cover. So I hope this meets your guys' criteria, and if you're looking for more, definitely let us know. Make sure to subscribe to the channel so that you don't miss that video if we do happen to do it, or any of the other videos that we're going to be coming out with soon, because we're going to have tons of different videos on Graston after a throwing performance for recovery purposes. We're going to have all different things, and make sure you check out last week's video if you're a youth coach, a youth parent, or in fact anybody. You know, the exercises in the youth baseball exercise video I did last week are beneficial for anyone, and they're designed, well, they're not designed, but I used them in that scenario so that you could see how we take an athlete who hasn't been exposed to much training and take them and advance them. So you'll see that some of those exercises are actually in some of our corrective exercise progressions in advanced version. So we have a progression for all of the exercises, so you can move from stability to instability. So you actually acquire more stability and mobility through the entire range of motion, which is in our corrective exercise program and our full training manual, or complete, we call it our complete program, the OAI complete program online, which includes what we do biomechanically with the phase specific throwing program, but also our rotator cuff program, our advanced rotator cuff program, and then our corrective exercise, dynamic and static rotational mobility and stability exercises. So that's all available on our website. You can check out our free rotator cuff program on there as well. And thanks for viewing, guys. I know this has been a little bit longer video, and you know, hopefully it's been enlightening to people. And like I said, we're open to any debate, any discussion on any of this stuff. Contact us individually or on one of the public social media platforms, and we'll do our best to get back to you as soon as possible. So alrighty, guys, once again, Max Wardell, overheadathletics.com. Thanks, guys.